Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody is having a great start to your day. Very happy to have you guys for the next 3 hours. Join us at any point. Lucas and myself, 615-737-1045 is how you do it. Lot of news flying around this morning all over the NFL. So we are going to keep you updated with the latest, particularly coordinators. Guys getting hired, guys getting fired. NFL teams making a lot of different moves. We're going to talk about it within the context of the local professional football team, as well as some new options that may now be available to them in their pursuit of an offensive coordinator specifically. We are going to get to the Brady stuff later on because I've been having some interesting conversations about that, given that his season is now over and he's making public statements last night about all the things that, thanking the Bucs media and talking about his love for the organization and, basically verbalizing what last year he put in a statement after Adam Schefter and Jeff Darlington thought he was retiring, but it wasn't actually a retirement. Plenty of time for that. But as far as the Titans staff is concerned, reports this morning from our dear friend Diana Rossini at ESPN, Jim Schwartz getting hired away from the Titans as a senior defensive assistant by the Cleveland Browns, who are going to make him their next defensive coordinator. Joe Woods, who was embattled, to put it politely, was out in Cleveland almost immediately after the season. And now they get a very, very valuable asset in Cleveland to help kind of prop that defense back up. Now, for the Titans, what does that mean? Well, I mean, we're not in the meeting rooms, you and I. We're not privy necessarily to all the different ways that Schwartz impacts what it is that they do defensively, game plan, strategy, and the like. But there's no question that they're a worse staff for having lost him. Now, here's the thing. Shane Bowen has really, really done well to kind of grow into this defensive coordinator role. So while I understand why there might be a degree of hand-wringing today, probably more than just a degree, the dude that you have running the show for this thing, I think has really proved himself capable. Now, that's a far stretch from where we were after the 2020 season, when y'all wanted him Todd Downing'd for a variety of different reasons. They made some personnel changes. As far as the players were concerned, hired Schwartz, gave Bowen the full-time defensive coordinator title, so he didn't have to spend all his time with the outside linebackers and then on Sundays call the defense. And so with all those things getting ironed out, I think he's done pretty well for himself. Now, statistically, and specifically their passing defense, the Titans' passing defense was poor by any stretch of the imagination. Bottom three in the NFL. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole injury thing. We can do that for every phase of the game for the Titans. But at this point, the Jim Schwartz thing is interesting to note. Looking at a couple of these other news items, Diana is also reporting that the Chargers have fired their offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, who was, I mean, nobody seems to like their offensive coordinator. Find me, who is an NFL fan base that likes their offensive coordinator from the past season? I can't think of one. I'm sure there is.
Niners.
Well, I mean, their guy calls the plays.
Yeah. I mean, how many of the best offenses in football have the head coach calling plays?
Ooh, that is an excellent question.
I'm sure Cowboy fans, I don't know how Cowboy fans feel about Kellen Moore.
Oh, I bet they love him after last night. Are you kidding me? My guy, after the first, they threw on all three downs of the first possession, and after that, they were just rattling off touchdown drive after touchdown drive. They made Tom Brady look silly, or they made the Bucs defense look silly last night, and Tom Brady not really doing much to be able to help the situation on the other side of the ball. That was a blowout, and it really wasn't as close as 31-14.
Giants fans probably pretty happy with their situation.
I think so, but he's soon to be gone, so it would
Kafka?
seem Mike Kafka is getting a lot of looks for head coaching jobs, but doesn't necessarily guarantee that he'll get one this cycle. I think that there's a couple of different ways that you can look at this.
So that's 6 offensive coordinator openings in the NFL, Titans included.
Now, here's what I'll say. Is Peterson calling the plays in Jacksonville? I don't know the answer to that question. I would have to send a text to be sure, but as I look at this, and this was a note pointed out by my friends and colleagues at A to Z Sports, 7 of the 8 remaining NFL teams are coached by offensive-minded head coaches. So you have the Bengals, the Bills, whose head coach and Brian Daboll gave up the play calling specifically. And by the way, I thought did himself quite a service in doing so, given that I think he's handled a lot of game situations very, very well without having to have the burden of play calling also on his plate in game. So Bengals, we'll count the Bills just because of who that individual is and specifically why he was hired. Eagles, you have not the Bills. The Giants. Daboll, the former Bills offensive coordinator. So Giants, Eagles, Bengals, Niners, Jags, Chiefs, and then the Cowboys. Kellen Moore is obviously they're running the show.
I'd say Bills fans are pretty happy with the job that Dorsey has done.
Ken Dorsey has
stepping in for Daboll
since his mini meltdown in the booth that CBS caught on camera. I think he's acquitted himself quite well.
Well, and look at this little stream of coaching hires that they have funneling through quarterback's coach position, offensive coordinator position. Daboll, the play caller. Dorsey was the QB coach. Daboll moves on. Dorsey steps up. Who's the QB coach now in Buffalo? Be Joe Brady. Joe Brady, who was fired from Carolina, but still has a future.
Everything that went wrong in Carolina, I think Joe Brady the least of their problems. And by the way, super young when he got hired by an NFL team, as he was when he was in LSU or at LSU. He is somebody who's going to get plenty more opportunities to do what he wants to do
and
at this level.
I don't think Dorsey's a head coaching candidate right now, but if he is down the road, I imagine Joe Brady would be a prime candidate to step up and be the offensive coordinator for that continuity. By the way, Doug Peterson, when he was hired in Jacksonville, said he wants to call the plays.
Okay. So, again, there is an offensive coordinator in Jacksonville who's involved with the calling of the plays. It's not specific, even if one person is executing the actual call to the quarterback. The way that Mike Vrabel was so good to break down for us as to how the play calling process works earlier this year.
Press Taylor, the OC in Jacksonville.
And Press Taylor, who was formerly with the Indianapolis Colts under Frank Reich, if memory serves.
Yeah, well, he was the QB coach under Peterson in Philly.
So, these things are all usually connected in some form or fashion by previous stops. It is a benefit in today's league if your coaching staff skews offensive-minded. There's no disputing that that's the case. Now, I'm not saying that. There's nobody. Mike Vrabel is regarded as a top by any credible person you talk to in the NFL. Mike Vrabel is regarded as a top 3, if not top 5, or top 5, if not top 3 coach in the NFL right now. The man is very, very well equipped to be able to do his job. But now they have to find somebody who's going to be able to put them in positions to succeed and to work around the different limitations that they currently have. Now, Senior Bowl is less than 2 weeks away. Mobile, Alabama, where that goes down, and the senior draft prospects, the NFL coaching staff, scouting staffs, front office personnel, everybody in Mobile for the week, agents, where a lot of the groundwork for things like coaching moves and free agency gets laid before combine and then in March when the free agency cycle officially picks up. So as far as the dominoes that need to fall for Tennessee, general manager, I would expect to hire in short order. at this stage because we're just moving very quickly through the process or getting closer to the process that they need to have somebody in place for, which does affect a lot of the different things that we're talking about before people get ahead of themselves with things like Tom Brady to the Titans, which I got time for later on. But I think as you look at this and all the different moves that are being made, I do want to talk a little bit about Kellen Moore because the Cowboys are interesting to me. And another Cowboys-linked coach who's out there basically taking any and all offers from any NFL team that seems to be interested in his skill set. We've got winners and losers today later on, so make sure you come prepared with that at 10:45. And Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus, who absolutely lives for the Senior Bowl, is going to join us at 11:20 today. We'll break down what we saw from Wild Card Weekend. And now we have the divisional field set. These 8 teams that are going to be competing for the opportunity to advance. Jags at Chiefs, the schedule official now. In this order, Jags at Chiefs, Giants at Eagles, Bengals at Bills, the Sunday nightcap, Cowboys at 49ers. Spicy.
So we mentioned 6 offensive coordinator openings in the NFL. It would actually be 7, right? With the Bucs letting go of Byron Leftwich.
They did fire Byron, or reportedly they did fire Byron Leftwich this morning. I haven't seen anything official from
so
the
because
team.
Okay, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN says 6 offensive coordinator openings: Chargers, Commanders, Titans, Rams, Jets, Patriots. He does not include the Bucs in that, I guess, because the team hasn't officially announced it. Fowler tweeted this.
Well, I mean, you can report those things. Rappaport was out there with it this morning, and Ian is well sourced, so fair to assume that that's a thing that can be is going to come down. Now, my friend Carmen Vitale, who is very, very works for Fox Sports now and covered the Bucs for a very long time. Now covering the NFC North for Fox. I did see almost immediately after the game last night, she tweeted out to expect significant changes on the Bucs coaching staff.
Pewter Report reported that the Bucs had plans to fire Leftwich since the bye week.
Forgive me. Pewter Report is where I saw
that,
okay. Not Ian Rappaport. So, something to keep in mind. I think the Byron Leftwich is another interesting one. But like Todd Bowles, that defense got all year long. Now, they have a lot of different issues in Tampa generally. Again, I say to you, that was a bad football team, a team that had no business competing against the Cowboys and didn't compete against the Cowboys. They really have been languishing all year long, and it's Tom Brady's worst regular season record of his career. So all of these things are going to be taken into consideration, and now that the pool is becoming larger for your offensive coordinator search, you can expect to see more names linked to the local team who is exploring their possibilities at offensive coordinator at present. So let's get into the Cowboys and the Bucs game a little bit, given the intrigue around NFL coaches, play callers specifically, who could be jockeying for jobs. Because Joe Buck must have mentioned Kellen Moore's name. Could not stop glowing, rightfully so, about Kellen Moore and the interview cycle that he went through for NFL head coaching positions last year that he will very, very much be in play for again this year. Your phone calls as well, 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Welcome back. Cowboys and Bucks last night. Super wild card weekend officially concluded. On to the divisional round. Now, as we talk about the offensive coordinator search for the Titans, teams like the Cowboys and, frankly, the Buccaneers are relevant. The Brady situation, the reported link already to the Tennessee Titans again, is something that we'll get to a little later on because I have thoughts on that. I got a very funny text about that this morning that I'll share with you guys probably in the noon hour. So we'll get to Brady and Tommy Titan later on. But the way that the Cowboys just straight up thumped the Bucks last night, I think, is notable for a variety of reasons. So Kellen Moore had 3 or 4 head coaching interview requests last cycle. Didn't get any of them, but returned to the Cowboys this season. Had mixed results is really not fair to them because obviously they had an incredibly successful season. They've won 13 games, including last night, throughout the course of this year, and they have done it in very, very efficient and effective ways. Now, Dallas, I'd be fascinated to know, like, the chain of command for the Cowboys draft room, like how much Jerry actually has to do with the selection of the play. I'm sure I know Jerry is the person picking the players, but Dallas really does draft well. And given that Jerry is the de facto GM, you have to give him some degree of credit, although I'm sure they put good people in place throughout the course of that. So they've got talent, but they've got an offensive coordinator that really puts them in good positions to succeed. Now, Dak Prescott, the interception thing that we talked about throughout the course of Dak's career, he is going to give you some opportunities to make some plays on the ball, but he was unbelievably good last night. Set a postseason record by running for a touchdown, throwing a touchdown in his 4th straight playoff game. He looked incredibly confident. Dalton Schultz, where were you for the Dalton Schultz game? Was last night more what's the kicker's first name? I know the last name's Maher. Brent Maher. My God, man. I'm just actively trying to undermine. I tweeted this last night. I think I gave some Titans fans some PTSD. Do you remember that 2020 opener with Stephen Gostkowski?
Yep.
Where it's just nightmare scenario in Denver. The Titans ended up winning that game by a hair, but just missed kick after missed kick, missed extra points all over the place. 4 for Brett Maher last night. But Dalton Schultz, Dak Prescott in that Cowboys running game really did well to pick up the slack. He was Maher. It was pretty interesting. Very consistent during the regular season. I went back and looked at his numbers. Just 3 extra points all year, and then 4 on Monday night. But the larger point about Kellen Moore, the play caller there for the last couple of seasons, the job that he has done to kind of put them in positions to succeed. Not at the time a person who was experienced. Kellen Moore was fresh out of Boise State, it felt like, when he went into coaching. And obviously he's still fairly young.
He's not even 35.
I was about to say, Kellen Moore, he can't be.
He's 34. He'll be 35 in the summer.
34 years old at this point. So he's obviously done well to establish himself in short order. And yesterday we talked about the idea of hiring an established play caller for the Titans, somebody who has had a track record of in-game success, among other things. They have to have other traits, but I said that it would be my preference, given where this team is right now, to have basically a stabilizing force that you don't have to worry about on top of all the other issues that this team has had in the last couple of seasons revolving around their offense. Now, Kellen Moore, I assume, is going to be an interview candidate at whatever point the Cowboys season comes to a conclusion. I assume that NFL ownership groups are going to want to talk to that guy again about their head coaching openings.
I believe they already are.
Well, they can, given the way that they've changed the rules, much to the chagrin of Titans fans after the 2020 season, where Art, I think literally after the wild card round game against the Ravens, the one that they lost at home to Lamar Jackson, Art was like, oh, I can't remember if it was a Zoom or if he physically went to interview for like the Jets right after the game, the afternoon that the game was over. So there's more flexibility in the hiring process or the hiring protocols for candidates to get in front of teams without having to wait until the team that they're coaching for, their season is over.
The Panthers had requested to interview more.
Okay. So the note that I just saw about offensive-minded play callers and head coaching candidates and things of the like just dropped into our laps from Chris Mortensen. Now, Mort says, given that the Chargers just and officially announced it about 42 minutes ago, that they have parted ways with Joe Lombardi, their passing game coordinator, as well. So OC Joe Lombardi and passing game coordinator, quarterbacks coach Shane Day, also not retained under Joe Lombardi. This is what Chris Mortensen says. If Frank Reich does not land a head coaching job, he is an obvious candidate for the Chargers OC, and that's been speculated in the past month or so. He's been with the Chargers previously. He would bring head coaching experience to his staff, and his integrity is unquestioned. We're going to get into this more tomorrow, basically ranking the openings right now where offensive coordinators are concerned, because this we'll see what happens with the Bucs offensive coordinator, who is still technically on the staff.
Leftwich.
Right now, Byron Leftwich. So of the 7, theoretically, we'll see what happens with Byron Leftwich. Where do the Titans kind of stack up in this mix? Because they're going to have, people are already drooling. People were drooling while Joe Lombardi had the job to line up to work with Justin Herbert and the skill position players that Los Angeles has right now. And if their offensive line gets healthy, they have done well to kind of put that thing together. Just kind of, injuries kind of damned them this season, and it really disrupted a lot of what they were able to do. Joe Lombardi, the biggest criticism of him is that he doesn't necessarily take risks with Justin Herbert, who's clearly a superior talent at the position. Putting Frank Reich in that role would be, pretty deadly.
Would Frank Reich, behind Sean Payton, though, not be the hottest commodity as far as a head coaching candidate?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so, but he's right up there. He's right up there in that same conversation. So who would D'Amico Ryans is a more sought after head coaching candidate at this stage, the 49ers defensive coordinator, than Frank Reich is right now. Now, teams and ownership, more specifically, more touchdowns, more points, more money, baby. Ownership is going to look at the offensive guys first, and we've seen that trend over the course of the last couple of years. They want the thing that's going to put them in the best position to succeed. If you're not necessarily, and you can hire defensive coaches as head coaches to do that. There are obvious ones that you can point to. Vrabel is one of them where they're a success. McDermott, Sean McDermott, the Bills head coach is the same ilk, but more often than not, franchises are going to default towards the offensive-minded head coach. I think D'Amico Ryans is thought of in that same category as the next Vrabel, the next McDermott, the next
Robert Saleh.
Well, hey,
that's who he followed.
You know what? To Robert Saleh's credit, New York is not an easy job, and they missed the playoffs. They fumbled the bag. But to kind of figure out all the different things that they had to, especially when Robert Saleh is doing local New York radio and saying, I'm keeping receipts on everybody who's been talking down on us at this point, and still trying to scrounge together I would consider this year a success, even if it didn't feel like it at the end for the Jets. I think Robert Saleh is very capable at this point, and there are other examples around the league. But beyond that, so Frank Reich, I think of the offensive candidates, I would put Frank Reich 2 to Sean Payton's 1. And Sean Payton, it's not as easy as the other guys. You're going to have to give up an asset. Right now it's looking like a first-round pick at minimum to acquire the rights to Sean Payton as your employee from the New Orleans Saints. So Mickey Loomis is kind of holding the keys on that a little bit, the Saints GM. Speaking of Sean Payton, Now, Sean Payton is currently working as an analyst right now. Took a year off from the Saints, has obviously expressed an interest in getting back into coaching, and basically is reporting on his own coaching status.
I've never seen anything like what Sean Payton's doing right now.
Well, I mean, what's another example of a coach leaving like that, going into media, but still, literally at his press conference when he was leaving the Saints, be like, yeah, I'll get back into coaching.
Right, but his situation's unique because there needs to be compensation, right? Like the Saints need compensation for giving up Sean Payton to another franchise. He's still under contract with the New Orleans Saints, so he's out there reporting on what it would take to hire him, quote unquote, away from the Saints because he is still under contract. And he's the one reporting on those details. He's the one reporting on who he's interviewing with next and what he wants out of his next job. It's just a fascinating thing. You just don't see this.
So he's doing interviews, most recently with Colin Cowherd. And, he's now available for all of this. And he does this radio hit, I believe, yesterday, where he's talking about not only the things that it would take to acquire him, but the teams who have been actively jockeying with the Saints to try and acquire his rights. This is a quote, Denver's the first team I was able to have a conversation with their owner, and that's kind of the protocol. So it'll go team to Saints, and then the interview process can't officially begin until the 17th of this month, so that's really where it's at. And today is the 17th. So, the Broncos have the kind of pick that it would take to acquire, quote, a mid to late first-round pick is what is being requested for the rights to Sean Payton as an employee. Now, it's not just the teams that have been – we know that the Houston Texans have been in the market for a head coach even, and one would think that they're going to treat Sean Payton with a little more respect than they did Lovie Smith or David Culley before them, where they're just kind of throwing bleep at a wall and completely disrespecting both of those individuals as one-and-done head coaches. So in the middle of this interview, Sean Payton is asked specifically about his interview process with the Houston Texans, which is on the horizon. And his comments about the AFC South are laugh-out-loud funny.
And it's set up with Cowherd, because the question's not in here, asking him about his priorities when looking at his next job. And he talks about owner and quarterback, and basically which of those is more important.
Look, finding both, generally speaking, if the quarterback is there, they're probably a team that's playing well, generally speaking. And so the teams that have openings, I'm not going to say are broken, but they've had problems. That's why there's an opening.
Right.
And so I think that element's critical, the ownership element, and philosophically, because and I've said this, and I hope it's not looked at as an indictment on certain teams, but there are a number of teams. It's hard to win in this league, and it's certainly harder to win in this league if there's internal problems before you even play an opponent.
Right. Let's say it's a bad. Texans. It's a team they got to find a quarterback probably. Are you willing to consider that? If
absolutely.
Okay,
Here's
would.
why. And look, I think I know the ownership group. Not very well, but we practiced against the Texans in New Orleans 4 or 5 different times. So Cal McNair, his late father, we'd see them, and so I don't know them well, but I know them. We've when you practice for 3 days with an opponent, you get a chance to meet a lot of the different personalities and people involved in the building. They've got really good draft capital. Really good draft capital.
Couple good young players.
They're in a division that you can at least look at and say, all right, Indy, Tennessee, Jacksonville is nothing. But you can at least, all right, how do we – so I think there's growth potential immediately there from their 2 or 3 wins that they had this year. I know Nick a little bit, Caserio, because, again, when he was in New England, we had a lot of practices with their team. So each team – would be just like we're having that discussion. There'd be pros, and that's the significance, though, of the upcoming week or two, of meeting some of these individuals, asking some questions, maybe some difficult questions, and trying to get answers so that we're not having difficult questions when you've already taken the job.
So that's Sean Payton with Colin Cowherd yesterday, and just Somebody writes in the Zone TV chat, just did a drive-by on the Titans, Colts, and Jags. I mean, spot the lie, if we can steal a line from the morning show. This division, the NFC South was objectively a worse division this year. But, I mean, we all saw what the AFC South was in 2022. This division is a laughingstock. It has been at varying different points in its existence. The AFC South is not a highly competitive. I mean, I guess you could call it highly competitive just by nature of the bad teams keep tripping and falling all over themselves, except the Jags seem to have figured something out, while the Texans and the Colts are in a downward spiral, and the Titans have been kind of ruling over the trash heap for quite some time, but not as of late. Really, not for the better part of 2 months at this stage. So what Sean Payton is saying there is fact. You can win the division, get yourself to the postseason, and give yourself an opportunity. And while the Texans' job is very, very much, I still think it's not a good job by any stretch of the imagination, because, like, the quarterbacks this year, if Bryce Young is the best quarterback in the NFL draft right now, but Bryce Young, I would look at the talent level, and you talk to, like, scouts and general managers about this stuff, this guy is a fringe top 10 talent, but the best quarterback in the draft. NFL teams are not actively seeking to draft quarterbacks who are 5'11" and, what is he, 175 or something like that? Even if he's very capable, even if he's able to operate a pro-style system, like, there is a durability factor that comes into play when you are that much smaller than the standard NFL quarterback is. And it's not, it's not necessarily, he's still a talented player. I'm not trying to take away from Bryce Young in that spot.
Things that have not held back players like Drew Brees and Russell Wilson.
But I can't keep coming back to those two as the example when there's so many other Baker Mayfields and Kyler Murrays and all these other guys where there's just the two that continue to be cited as the example. It's like saying, well, you can find Tom Brady in the 6th round if you're good at what you do. Well, no, there's literally one example of that across the history of sports.
Well, there's two. Brock Purdy.
Stop it. What is wrong with you?
But we're looking at the likelihood next season of, two top 5, top 10 picks at quarterback in this division.
Yeah.
And when you look at Bryce Young and Will Levis and C.J. Stroud, the 3 names that are being thrown up there, 2 of those 3 are probably going to be in the AFC South, right? Like, as far as the odds right now on January 17th.
I can almost assure you that the Colts are going to be running out there with a rookie quarterback next year, a highly drafted quarterback at the position. By the way, C.J. Stroud, it was funny to see it. He didn't declare until yesterday. And I have some, obviously, I'm from Evansville, Indiana. There's a lot of Colts fans in my life. I had a lot of Colts fans just getting chest tightness because Stroud had not, until yesterday, while I think we were on the air, declared for the NFL draft, and starting to make them nervous about, oh my God, does he not want to play for the Colts? Why doesn't he want to play for the Colts? What's wrong with us? Please, Jim Irsay, fix it.
I mean, there were reports that Stroud seriously did consider coming back. And
for sure.
Going on another run with Ohio State.
No, I absolutely saw that. I think the people obviously saying fingers crossed for Levis.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, but
the SEC fan portion of the Titans fan base is probably afraid of Bryce Young and hoping for Will Levis.
Yeah, and like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be afraid of Bryce Young. I'm just saying the Texans are not, like, if Bryce Young is the selection there, because they have the 2nd overall pick at this point, if Bryce Young is the selection there, they have a lot of other things that they have to iron out around Bryce Young, not to the degree that Trevor Lawrence had an uphill fight with Urban Meyer as his head coach. But you understand kind of the difficulties that lie ahead there. Now, if you wanted to put that dude in a position to succeed, what would you do? You'd hire Sean Payton. But Sean Payton is literally going to have his pick of any job, it seems like, that he wants at this stage. And, I mean, now that we're down to the final 8 teams in the NFL playoffs, I don't know that anybody's in doubt. I think Mike McCarthy has probably done well to keep his job at this stage, given how dominant they looked last night. But, who's to say there's not going to be one more opening where we all look around and be like, what the bleep happened there?
With that said, you're talking about a potential 1st-round pick needing to go to the Saints in order to get Sean Payton. Could the Texans give up that pick for Sean Payton? The number 2 overall pick in the draft?
No, not in good conscience. No.
Because, I mean, that pick would be should be
there?
attractive to Sean Payton anyway, right? Like
Don't they have what was the compensation for Deshaun? I'll have to. Well, why don't we do winners and losers of the sports weekend? We'll figure out what the Texans draft situation looks like, because I do think that's an interesting conversation to have there. Second overall pick, absolutely not. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Got winners and losers. 10:45 on a Tuesday. You know how that goes. 615-737-1045. We'll get to him in a second. Lucas brought up the idea of the Texans trading draft compensation for Sean Payton. Texans have 11 picks in the 2023 NFL Draft. They have the second overall. They have the 12th overall, which is the Cleveland pick. So that, the mid to late first rounder that we talked about. They've got what is basically a first-round pick in the 33rd overall selection. So that's the first pick in the second round, as well as 2 third-rounders, a fourth, a fifth, 4 sixths.
Yeah, they don't have to give up that second pick.
No, they do not. But I was not aware that they had – I wasn't sure where the Deshaun first-round pick was because they got the first and the third in this year's draft from the Browns in the Deshaun Watson trade.
I wonder what the record is for number of picks by a team in the modern era of the draft with 7 rounds.
In like one draft?
Yes.
Oh, that's a good question. I have no idea.
We'll
figure that out later. Meantime, circus music, please. Winners and losers. Who had a good weekend? Who had a bad weekend in sports? 615-737-1045. Not that difficult because there's a lot to choose from. There went Tom Brady's Buccaneers career right down the trapdoor. In fact, winner. Let me start with the Dallas Cowboys. 7 straight losses to Tom Brady, no mas. They had an 8-game losing streak on the road in the postseason, no mas. They beat the holy hell out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last night. Jerry Jones, Michael Irvin, they look like they got the party started early in the owner's suite in Raymond James Stadium last night. I think the Dallas Cowboys, I don't think anybody had a better weekend from a playoff standpoint, given the stakes, the scrutiny, and all the damn overrated conversation around the Dallas Cowboys year in and year out than the Dallas Cowboys franchise. They are the winners of the sports weekend.
I'll tell you who had a better weekend than the Dallas Cowboys.
Tell me, bud.
Cliff Kingsbury, the former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, had a better weekend than the Cowboys because you think he was watching the wild card round? I doubt it.
I don't think so.
He bought himself a one-way ticket to Thailand after being fired by the Arizona Cardinals. Peter Schrager said on Fox Saturday that Cliff Kingsbury bought the one-way ticket to Thailand and is telling any interested teams he is not interested in returning at the moment. Kingsbury says, bleep your head coaching openings. I'll work when I want to work. A one-way ticket. That's my favorite thing about this. Like, he didn't schedule a trip.
Specifically a one-way ticket.
Yeah, not like I'll. You know what? I'm going to go for 2-3 weeks to Thailand, clear my mind, come back, and then maybe resume my career. He said, no, just send me to Thailand. I'll figure it out later. Cliff Kingsbury on the beaches of Thailand is my winner of the weekend.
People are stressing about trying to get a hold of Cliff Kingsbury for the Titans OC job. My guy's probably out here at an elephant sanctuary or something like that, hanging out in a jungle bungalow or, oh my God, I can't imagine. Honestly, I have friends who literally are in Thailand right now doing that trip. They've been over there for a month. It looks insane, and I can't imagine what one could do with the resources of Cliff Kingsbury and a one-way ticket in Thailand. Good for that guy. I've never had more respect for him than I do right now.
I bet the food's amazing.
Loser of the sports weekend, the aforementioned Thomas Edward Patrick Brady. Tom Brady and the amount of spinning he is having to do to make people think that there are a variety of different NFL teams interested in his services after the way he played, not just last night, but all season long. Now, I've said to you before, Tom Brady's still got plenty of good football in him, which is crazy because he's going to be 40-6. But the PR machine around Tom Brady, which is very, very specific and rehearsed, is already in full swing. Tom Brady needing to spin his own PR at this point. The loser of the sports weekend, a future Tennessee Titans quarterback. No performance could have made me more sold on the idea that Brady's going to be the Titans quarterback next year than last night.
Has Brett Maher gotten cut yet? That's my loser of the weekend.
I felt so bad for him. So bad for him. He looked like he might cry.
33 years old. He's been around the league since 2013. He's made pit stops in the CFL and a couple of other spots, and ultimately has come back around to the NFL, and he has been the Cowboys kicker. This season was with the Saints last season, but 4 missed extra points, an NFL record. It was really amazing to watch. Because the first one, it's like, okay, it happens. It's happened, I feel like, a lot this year, actually. Missed extra points in the NFL. So the first one, it is what it is. The second one, it was like, oh, I can't believe you did it again. The third one, you're up and pacing around your living room with your hands on your head, not even being a Cowboys fan, saying, how is this happening? And then the fourth one, it just feels like he's playing a prank on you at that point. The thing that I feel like we were robbed of, and I'm not even like a big Cowboys hater. I'm pretty indifferent about the Cowboys, but I feel like we were robbed of what would have been amazing comedy of the Cowboys blowing that lead and ultimately losing by like 2 points because of those missed extra points.
Oh, no, I was mentally preparing myself for that to basically be the way that the show went. The more that he missed. Now, obviously, Tampa had 0 answers for Dallas. On the defensive side of the ball, they were just getting run consistently. But yes, Brett Maher, tough scene last night for the 33-year-old, soon-to-be former Dallas Cowboys kicker. 615-737-1045. Who are the winners and losers of the sports weekend? Jimmy in Franklin is first. Hey, Jimmy.
What's going on, Buck? How are you doing today?
Doing great, buddy.
All right, man. Winner's got to be Hubbard from the Bengals. Scoop and score, 98 yards. I can't believe that Baltimore doesn't have somebody on that defense, or that offense that could have caught the guy.
Oh, Mark Andrews was so close. I watched the replay yesterday. He was so close and just tripped and fell over himself at the end.
Jeez, Manetti. And loser, my Tennessee Volunteers tripping at the finish line, laying a big fat egg in Thompson Bowling in front of Candace Parker and all the VFLs. They were there to watch the game, and they totally bleeped the bed.
It's true. Thank you for the call, Jimmy. Yeah, Chris Lofton retirement jersey ceremony obviously a big deal, and congratulations to Chris. That was a really cool moment for him and his family.
Yeah.
But also,
Allen Houston was in the house, all-time lead scorer in program history. He mentioned Candace Parker. Yeah, tough.
They ruined it. Kentucky ruined it in ways that I'm sure delighted them. Jason in Murfreesboro next. Hey, Jason.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
What you got?
My loser I want to start off with has got to be the Minnesota Vikings. What were you thinking on fourth down? You didn't run a route past the first down marker and throw a short pass. That was awful to me.
Honestly, it kind of reminded me, Jason, of Dobbs. Did you end up listening to that Bussin' with the Boys interview they did with Josh? It was I don't like to give Will and Taylor credit for anything because bleep those guys, but it was really, really good, and they were so mean to him about throwing the check down on, what was it, fourth and 13?
Yeah, something like that. Minnesota, it was 4th and 8, and really that was Dexter Lawrence just completely. Who's the Viking center? Linderbaum, right? The rookie, just got manhandled by Lawrence, and he was in Kirk Cousins' lap, and Cousins, I guess in that moment you just chuck it up, you know what I mean? But.
No, not like that.
He just kind of threw it to the first person he saw.
He went full Kirk Cousins, which is, I think that was probably the most predictable, quote-unquote, upset of the first round of the NFL playoffs.
Kirk Cousins was not the reason they lost that game. I'm seeing way too much Kirk Cousins hate, acting like he's the reason he threw 3 interceptions and blew the game for the Vikings. That defense is the reason they lost that game.
Well, and you bring up Dexter Lawrence, man, who has long been like kind of a thing that people point and laugh at the Giants for doing. When Jeffrey Simmons was taking 2 picks after him in the 2019 NFL Draft, Dexter Lawrence is an absolutely unholy mess in the middle of that defense. Getting that kind of pressure from the nose position, Dexter Lawrence about to make himself some money alongside. Honestly, if I was the Titans, I'd try to get Jeff paid before Dexter Lawrence gets paid because that's only going to go up. All right, we'll get more of your phone calls in just a second. We are also going to dip into the NFL coaching carousel. One big domino that did not fall that's going to impact this hiring cycle. We'll tell you what's going on there coming up next.
It is 11:02. Good morning from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. The divisional round in the NFL is set after last night's dominant 31-14 win by the Cowboys over the Bucs. In the AFC, it'll be the Jags visiting the Chiefs as the Bengals travel to Buffalo. In the NFC, the Cowboys will head to San Francisco while the Giants go to the top-seeded Eagles. The Predators scored 2 in the first period and held on for a home win 2-1 over the Calgary Flames last night. Preds sit 5 points back of a wildcard spot in the West, back at it tonight, hosting the Columbus Blue Jackets. More Titans staff changes this week in both the front office and the coaching staff. Multiple reports this morning that the Cleveland Browns are hiring defensive assistant Jim Schwartz as their defensive coordinator. On Monday, Titans director of player personnel Monty Ossenfort was announced as the new general manager of the Arizona Cardinals. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second down on this Tuesday. What is happening? Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Lucas Panzica, Buck Rising here with you until 1 o'clock. You can join the fun at any point, 615-737-1045. Trevor Sikkema going to break it all down for us from Super Wild Card Weekend and preview the divisional round in just about 15 minutes from now. Our good friend from Pro Football Focus. I feel like we haven't talked to Trevor in a long time. That's a bad job out of us. But we'll look forward to that insight and analysis here momentarily. Meantime, a pretty substantial name, whether you consider him to be a good candidate or not, a different question, but a pretty substantial name removed from the NFL coaching cycle at this point. Yesterday afternoon, about, 4:30, 5 o'clock, Adam Rittenberg was the first that I saw report this. And then statements being put out. Jim Harbaugh returning as the head coach for the Michigan Wolverines for the 2023 season after talking with teams. This is an important one. He's returning after talking with teams about a potential return to the NFL for a second straight year. So, who do you think sat Jim down and was like, Jim, come on, bud. What are we doing here? You flew up to Minnesota for 9 hours last year in the middle of National Signing Day, didn't get a job. You want to do this again? His reputation, he is obviously adept at what he does. Let me not take anything from Jim Harbaugh. His resume is incredibly impressive. But he is also, on a scale of coaches and coaches who are hard to work with, for, or around, Jim Harbaugh is notably one of the most mentally, physically, emotionally grating of any coach out there in the college or pro ranks. He is an irritant. And also he's just a different type of personality. I've talked to people, our buddy Mike Sando of The Athletic, who does exceptional reporting around the league as a whole. I remember Sando talking about, and I think this was on his podcast for the Athletics podcast, NFL show. He was talking about the idea he had a sit-down interview with Jim Harbaugh one time, and he was trying to figure out, okay, what am I doing wrong? That this is one of the worst conversations that I've ever had with anybody across football. And it's just Harbaugh. He's just a different kind of cat. Like there's no good way to get a read on him. And I think if you watch some of his press conference clippings and stuff like that, other than like the crazy stuff that he says from time to time, you kind of get the vibe. Now, whether that should remove him from NFL coaching ranks or cycles at this point, I don't think that's necessarily so, but I think you understand.
At this point it is, though.
Well, yes, at this point. Well, not the only thing. There's other things going on there.
Yeah. Well, Adam Schefter reported that Harbaugh called the Broncos, said, hey, he's staying at Michigan. He's staying at Michigan in the near future. Like that has been settled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, yeah.
And hopefully we've seen the last statement from Jim Harbaugh in this cycle.
In this cycle?
Yes. How many combined statements from Jim Harbaugh, from Michigan's AD, from Michigan's president? I'm just glad it's over.
I think we probably have at least one more statement. I think just, if you're betting over or over under on the amount of statements around Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, I would bet one over. I would go one more over at this point, even though it seems that this has been settled. This is the latest statement from University President Santa Ono, who tweeted from I'm sorry, I don't know. Is Santa Ono a man or a woman?
A man.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Tweeted Monday from his account that he spoke to Harbaugh, who confirmed he would return for a ninth season at his alma mater. You think the university president wanted like a social media win? He's like, hey, Jim, let me tweet this out.
Jim also put out a statement.
Let me have my Adam Schefter moment, damn it. So he's speaking to Harbaugh. And by the way, Santa Ono took over as the president in October and has been working to this effect with Ward Manuel, who is the Michigan athletic director. Quote, I love the relationship that I have at Michigan. This is from Harbaugh, coaches, staff, families, administration, President Santa Ono, and especially the players and their families. My heart is at the University of Michigan. I once heard a wise man say, don't try to out happy, go blue. It's very quaint, Jim. But it does, remove a sizable name and a name that was going to garner a lot more coverage because Harbaugh could have theoretically left his name in this thing for as long as he wanted to. Sure as hell did last year. Although I'm sure he was discouraged about doing the same thing that he did last year because that was kind of a mess. He did interview with the Broncos, though. I mean, he did interview with Denver. Also, didn't have a formal interview, but spoke with Carolina Panthers owner David Tepper about the head coaching position. That was according to David Newton at ESPN. He did call the Broncos on Monday to remove himself from their consideration, as Lucas pointed out, and now will return to Michigan. The lack of substantial movement, let's call it, the lack of substantial movement around college football this year. I mean, Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, I didn't watch the man. I honestly should have watched the Manning cast last night. It'd been better than watching that godforsaken game they're running highlights on my television again in here. But I know Deion was a guest of Peyton and Eli on the Manning cast last night. I didn't get to hear that conversation. Did you catch any of that?
At this point, anything worth seeing out of the Manning cast, you'll probably see floating around on Twitter.
Which, by the way, is the better way to do that. Just side note, like late night talk shows. How often are you watching like The Tonight Show at this point? Or are you just catching the highlights on social media from whatever celebrity does something goofy or says something ridiculous? I think that's what they should be doing with the Manning cast. In fact, I think that's what everybody ought to be doing is social media habits become more menu itemized for us all to consume. But conversation for another day.
You're talking about Coach Prime to Colorado, and the other one is Hugh Freeze to Auburn.
Beyond that,
that's it.
Yeah, that's really the only like things that you would consider substantial in the landscape of what college football looks like. One, because Colorado has been a nowhere program for the better part of 15 years at this stage, and they're just looking for something that's going to give them juice, and they found it. And Auburn, obviously, Hugh Freeze and the baggage that comes associated with him and the conversation that comes associated with him, and also a program with the platform that Auburn has and the scrutiny that Auburn will have. Those are really the only two things that happened that kind of that piqued my interest, I guess, from the college coaching carousel. And now Harbaugh removing his name from NFL consideration, just kind of, okay. That's pretty rare, I feel like, for college.
Well, it's a product of the amount of movement you had last year. Lincoln Riley was a big domino. Brian Kelly going from, there were just seismic moves to go from Oklahoma and USC and then another coach going from Notre Dame to LSU in the same carousel. That just doesn't happen. And it's the same thing you're seeing in the NFL. How many head coaching moves did you have last offseason? 8, 9? 8, 9 franchises?
I don't have the number in front of me specifically, but you're right. I'm putting it against the context of last year's college coaching, hiring and firing cycle and movement. And it's not even remotely close. Last year was crazy.
And it's the same there's a few head coaching openings in the NFL, but it's not even close to the number you saw last year. These big carousels with a ton of moving parts don't often happen back-to-back years.
So, we will see if there are any more statements to come out of the Michigan Harbaugh camp. But at this point, Jim back at Michigan with the Wolverines for the foreseeable future. Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus is going to join us coming up next. We're going to break down the NFL's wild card weekend results and look ahead to the divisional round with our buddy Trevor on Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. Our buddy Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus going to be here momentarily. We'll break down some NFL playoff games. Super wild card weekend, living up to the hype. Started poorly, ended poorly. Everything else in between. Chef's kiss type of stuff. Really, really enjoyed the football this weekend. Speaking of which, there was a scary moment last night in the middle of that terrible, terrible football game with Russell Gage, the Bucs wide receiver, and they have since put out an update. The team has put out an update around Russell Gage's situation. He went down in the fourth quarter of last night's game after the result was well out of hand, and he'd already been playing through a back situation, according to the broadcast. This is from the Bucs. After suffering a neck injury and concussion during the fourth quarter of last night's game, Russell was taken to a local hospital where he remained overnight for additional testing and observation. Russell has had movement in all of his extremities and will continue to undergo additional testing today. We will provide additional information as it becomes available. That's courtesy of the Buccaneers on Twitter. Scary stuff. And, you know, obviously the recency with the Damar Hamlin situation makes you particularly aware. I'm glad that those moments are being treated with heightened sensitivity, and glad to see that there is at least a positive development on the Russell Gage situation, unfortunate last night. Meanwhile, let's talk some ball. Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, at Tampa Bay Trey is where you can follow him. Buddy, it's been a while. What's up?
Bob, it's good to be with you, my friend. I appreciate you having me on the show, as always.
Absolutely. So, most surprising result of Super Wild Card Weekend to you was?
Probably how the Chargers collapsed, right? I mean, like, that has to be it. I'm trying to think to myself, that's the first one that came to my head when you asked me that question. And I know the term chargering exists for a reason, but even that, man, like, even that's bad. You're up 27-0. You got +4 in the turnover category in the first half, and you lose that football game. It's mind-blowing. That, and of course the epic collapse that the Indianapolis Colts had a couple of weeks ago to the Minnesota Vikings are two of the craziest games that I've ever witnessed. I mean, when you get up, and Derwin James said it himself after the game for the Chargers, he's like, when you're up 4 touchdowns, then you got to think that you're going to win a football game. You just got to believe that. So for the Chargers to have that kind of monumental collapse the way that they did, I was only hoping that the Jags were just going to get some good playoff experience, honestly. I thought it was cool that they won the division. It was nice to see Trevor Lawrence obviously get a playoff game, get that playoff experience, but I wasn't really expecting anything out of the Jaguars. I thought the Chargers were going to win this game, and I thought that they were the better team. Unfortunately, the mental fortitude of the team and how they collapsed, that has to be the biggest surprise out of everything that happened.
Well, and like it's you know, the idea of charging, it's like modern day Clemsoning when that was a thing in Dabo's early tenure. But and you know, the Chargers have obviously had this. The Phillip Rivers memes live on in perpetuity with how many different times they've been in situations where they've collapsed, but not quite like that. The reaction though to fire Joe Lombardi and their quarterbacks coach, their passing game coordinator, and their quarterbacks coach as well, along with Joe Lombardi this morning, I thought was interesting because I'm curious as to your perspective, given what we know Herbert to be and the way that offense runs, where there's clearly an emphasis placed on simply getting completions more than trying to utilize. They do take shots at times, but they do run a more conservative style of offense, it would seem, given the talent that they have at the most important position in sports. I did think that was an interesting move, though, because I think, the problems go so far beyond the offense, no?
Yeah, and, it was one of those things that kind of had to be done. Like, I don't think that Joe Lombardi was all of the issues that were going on with the Chargers offense, but he was part of it. And so for that, like, you got to make changes one way or the other. I think the Chargers' entire makeup of their passing attack is missing that speed element badly. Keenan Allen, he's not that kind of guy. He's an underneath slot receiver, really good route runner, but he's getting up there in age. You can already see that he's losing a little bit of a step, and that happens. It's not insult to Keenan Allen. I still think he's a good receiver. He's not going to be that guy that's going to beat you with speed. Mike Williams, he's a nice athlete on the outside, but he's never been a big separation guy. For as much as he is a vertical downfield kind of a player near the sideline, he's not really taking the top off a defense, if you will. And if he is, it's in a limited capacity. When we were doing mock drafts last year, I loved the idea of the Los Angeles Chargers getting a guy like Jameson Williams on the team to really round out and just complete what could be an incredible passing attack because of the emphasis that kind of speed would put or the stress that kind of speed would put on a defense, making them really be honest about a player who would get deep at any given time. They just don't have that player on the roster. So instead, they really, I think, went into their shell about these shorter passes, quick passes, being a little bit more methodical with it. And that's all good and well if you're moving the ball consistently, but you've got a guy who has an alien type of arm in Justin Herbert. You've got to open it up more. Now, some of that, again, is Joe Lombardi. Others of it is not really having the personnel to be able to do that. So I think that you're going to see them attack speed at the wide receiver position a little bit in the offseason, whether it's through the draft, through free agency, although the free agency spots aren't really great. That's something that I think they just need to get better with. They need to be a team that's getting a little bit more vertical with it, attacking deep down the field, not using Austin Eckler as much as they have out of the backfield, although he has had good returns with him. But ultimately, it does fall on Joe Lombardi. He was one of the dominoes that you knew at least had to fall and see change in Los Angeles for it to be different next year.
At Tampa Bay Trey is where you follow Trevor Sikkema. You can check out the NFL Stock Exchange podcast and all the work that he does for Pro Football Focus as well. So now, and before we continue talking about playoff football and teams that are relevant at this time of year, offensive coordinator is obviously a significant discussion around here, Trevor, but there's so many other, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess in Nashville. And I wonder, when you look at the problems that the Titans have beyond just the health of the football team, which cannot be discounted, and the names that are out there right now, I don't know how, I don't think this is a very attractive job given the kind of other openings that there are around the league with teams who are in better draft position, or teams who are already better equipped as far as their personnel is concerned. How do you view this offensive coordinator position in Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because Ryan Tannehill's coming off of injury. Obviously, that really affected his play. He was not able to be as effective as he has been since he became a Tennessee Titan. So this was a year that was a major down year for him, given expectations. He's getting a little bit older. He's getting into the last year of his contract, right? The offensive line's not where it needs to be. It needs to be upgraded. The passing group, of course, the pass catchers, they certainly need to be upgraded. They continue to need to add big-time impact players in that regard. And so you look at an offense that's incomplete. And for some offensive coordinators, I think that they might be able to say, okay, if I'm getting the trust from the coaching staff and from the front office to have my input in how to build this offense, well, then all of a sudden that becomes very alluring, right? I think that there's two ways that you can look at it. Sometimes it's a glass half full, glass half empty kind of a view. If you're sitting here, you could go, well, they don't really have any great options right now. Or you could look at it and say, hey, they don't have any great options right now, but I could help build them into whatever I think works best. So it all just kind of depends on where the power, I don't want to say struggle, I guess I'll say like power dynamic is going to go with whoever they hire. What kind of trust, what kind of input are you getting? Because that would go into how attractive this job in Tennessee would be. They've got the number 11 overall pick. I think that they're within striking distance for them getting a really good wide receiver, a really good offensive tackle. Heck, if they even wanted to go after a quarterback, they could. We heard that the Titans were one of the names that might be in the early sweepstakes for Tom Brady, right? So if you're going in for a guy like Tom Brady, then you're probably going to listen and look at other offers out there that are even beyond Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr, and who knows, right? So it all just kind of depends on the approach to how much input I think an offensive coordinator might have in Tennessee and what's coming next. Because I think everybody would agree that it's not where it needs to be. But that's not to say that it can't be an attractive job if you let somebody into the decision-making to bring in certain pieces, bring in certain players, and have some sway into how you use your draft capital and your overall just finances. So that's kind of the way that I look at things in Tennessee. Could be a lot of change coming, but that's not necessarily a bad thing if you allow somebody to kind of have some control with it.
The story from last night is the Dallas Cowboys and the work that offense did to absolutely just dominate the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You doing okay today, by the way?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying it. Like, I appreciate you using the adjective dominate. I appreciate it. That was good. Appreciate it.
What am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to do with Brady, though, Trevor? Like, honestly, and like this whole Titans and Tom Brady connection, and the Rappaport is obviously hugely credible, and that's coming from somewhere. He's not just saying that on national television. But, like, what the hell am I to do with Tom Brady?
I'm going to be honest with you. Now that the season's over and you kind of get to talk about some of the things that you've been hearing behind the scenes because we're starting to get some reports and everything. Pewter Report put out an article last night, really right as the game was ending, that the Buccaneers they're expected to fire offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich. And within that article, a part of it said that there was a plan to fire Leftwich in the middle of the season this season, and ultimately Todd Bowles decided that that's not what they wanted to do. So there was already a plan to move on from him, that he was not doing a good enough job as offensive coordinator. And you better believe that Brady probably had a big, strong, loud voice in the room to potentially make some changes. Todd Bowles, though, ultimate decision maker as the head coach, decides to keep Leftwich, decides to see if he could turn it around, and guess what? He didn't. A lot of people look at what Tom Brady has been over the second half of the season, and they have watched a quarterback that has been wildly inaccurate, certainly to Tom Brady standards. They've watched a quarterback that has not wanted to take hits, that has gotten the ball out of his hands so fast you can't even develop routes down the field. And you watched a quarterback that really not a lot of people would have trust in. Buck, I'm telling you, I think Tom Brady realized when they would not fire Byron Leftwich in the middle of the year, I think he realized that this year was a waste. I think he realized then for the second half of the season, I want to keep playing. I don't want to get hurt. I want to get out of this season, and whether I'm in Tampa next year or not, which it doesn't seem like he's going to be, I don't want whatever this season is going to be, whether they make the playoffs or not, to be a detriment into what could be next year, in which he could hand pick where he wants to go to potentially win another Super Bowl. Because you got to remember this. If Tom Brady plays next year, Tom Brady's not going to play next year just because. Like, if Tom Brady's not just going to play next year because, like, he wants a couple of extra bucks and he likes the game of football. Tom Brady's going to play next year because he's going to go to a situation in which he thinks he can win a Super Bowl. That's what it's going to be for Tom Brady. So I really do believe that when they decided to not get rid of Byron Leftwich in the middle of the year, he checked out. He was like, look, this season, not that he like didn't care to the point where he was reckless about it, but I do not believe you saw Tom Brady truly give it his all over the second half of the season. And I think he realized what was going on and truly the ceiling of this Buccaneers team and how it was not a Super Bowl caliber team. He knew where the year was going. And all that to say, I think Tom Brady's still a damn good quarterback. I think he's still got maybe 2 years left in the tank. I think that arm is still good. It's just a matter of him going to a team where he trusts the offensive line in front of him, where he's not getting rid of the ball in 2.1 seconds, and he can actually play the game the way that it needs to be played. So that's kind of my view. A lot of words vomiting there of what I've seen with Tom Brady over the last couple of months.
No, but it's all important analysis because I feel like it's informed is the reason I think it matters so much because. Like, we can have all the people doing body language studies of Tom Brady on the sideline when he's in the middle of his worst regular season of his career. And I think when you say, when you hear the terms, realize that this year was a waste at a certain point or checked out at a certain point, I think that could be an indictment of literally any other player who doesn't have the resume that Tom does. But I almost, I almost kind of appreciate the self-awareness in it. I'm sure Bucs fans probably don't like the idea of what that might have entailed and what that could have meant for their team moving forward. But I mean, at a certain point, this is about the sustainability of what he wants to do with his career, and what he wants to do with his career is continue to play football. And I agree with you. I'm not as I guess educated on the X's and O's of football as you are, obviously, Trevor. But what I see from that player is not somebody who's a wash. Like, Tom Brady is not the problem with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
No, absolutely not. I mean, like you saw near the end of the game last night. He goes into hurry up. He goes into like 2-minute drill. He's dropping dimes. The ball's going exactly where it needs to go. It's going with zip. It's going with velocity. It's going with confidence. And I think that's something that a lot of Bucs fans have been clamoring for a lot, is for the Bucs to go hurry up a lot more, and they just haven't used it, right? I know Tom Brady wants to use play action more. The Bucs just don't use it. Like it just was not what they were doing this year. And there are some, for as much as there was frustration kind of everywhere, there were those plays where, I mean, you even saw them last night. Everybody saw them last night. The ball just goes to nobody. Like it just hits the ground and it goes to nobody. And you go, okay, hold on. That's not a misfire. What is that? I genuinely believe that that's Tom Brady saying, I'm not having this football in my hand for any longer than I need to. Yeah. I'm getting rid of this football. And I don't care how ugly it looks, because sometimes the broadcast didn't even know what to do with it and they just moved on. They didn't even talk about it. And I'm telling you, Buck, as somebody who's watched every single Bucs game this year, that's been the norm. That's been the norm, especially throughout the second half of the season. And I really do just think that he realized what that coaching staff was going to be this year. He realized the ceiling of the team, how low it was, how many problems they had, whether it was from injury or whatever it was. And he said to himself, I got to look out for me. And I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I'm not even saying that like as a selfish accusation of him. I get it. I understand.
Right.
All Bucs fans have understood Tom Brady being on their team is a gift. Like the Bucs franchise has been so bad for so long, and all of a sudden they just get this incredible gift that falls into their lap. And it was always borrowed time, it felt like, with him. And you just wanted to get as much success as you could. And I understand what Bruce Arians was doing last offseason when he wanted to give the reins to Todd Bowles. I thought it was commendable for him to do that, to give Bowles a legit opportunity in a league that does not often give black head coaches legitimate opportunities to succeed. And so I thought it was commendable, and I love where Bruce was coming from to do that. But I just don't think Todd Bowles is a head coach. And we saw that in New York. We're seeing it in Tampa. And I think Tom Brady might have seen it down the second half of the season. And I think that it's hard to stay motivated when that's the case. So that's just my overall assessment of kind of what's been going on in Tampa.
Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So best matchup on the board now that we are through to the divisional round. You got the Jags, Chiefs, Giants at Eagles, Bengals and Bills, Cowboys at Niners. Which excites you the most?
It's got to be Bengals-Bills, right? I mean, this is one of the most highly anticipated regular season matchups that we didn't get to see for traumatic reasons, and now they get to play this game again in Buffalo. There's going to be so much emotion here, but even beyond the emotion, these are two of the best teams in the NFL with two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and they're truly going to give it their absolute all. I think that this game is going to be one of the best ones of the weekend. I certainly love the fact that we're getting Giants-Eagles Part 3. I think that that's going to be a lot of fun, too. The Giants are playing so well. Brian Daboll has that entire team coached up so well. So does Nick Sirianni on the other side, though. But because of the injuries that the Eagles have had, I think, and because they're obviously taking a week off, might be a little bit of a slow start for the Eagles, whereas the Giants are going to be coming out and they're going to hit the ground running like they did the week before. So I think that kind of evens that matchup up a little bit. But those are the two that I'm looking at, but I think most of my eyes are going to be on what the Bengals and the Bills are going to do, because these are two teams that can absolutely be Super Bowl champions in the end, and one of them's got to take each other out this weekend.
Did any quarterback have a better weekend than Daniel Jones?
Dude, I mean, that guy's made
what the hell
so much. That guy's made so much money this season. It's unbelievable. And I am a Daniel Jones skeptic. I was not a Daniel Jones believer. I didn't like it when the draft pick was made. I didn't like it in the first couple of years. Heck, I didn't even like it still at the beginning of this year. But consistency and success and time again, Brian Daboll has just shown that he is willing to put Daniel Jones in the absolute best situation to maximize his strengths as a passer and a runner, but then also mitigate some of the risks that go, all right, sure, this guy is not Joe Burrow. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Patrick Mahomes. We're not going to make him that. We're going to make him this special quarterback and get the most out of his unique ability as a rusher and a passer. And the Giants offense is just hitting on all cylinders, man. And I got to give Daniel Jones the credit for what he's been able to do this year. He's going to make a hell of a lot of money this year because of it. And he's somebody who I'm excited to watch this week against Philly. Yeah, I would have looked at this matchup a couple of months ago and said that, no, of course, there's no way the Giants are actually going to beat the Eagles. And now, especially because of what I saw last week and how well he played, how confident he played, I got to admit there's a possibility that the New York Giants beat the Eagles this weekend. I think the 7.5 line that this opened at is disrespectful. I'd have jumped on that one right away. But Jones has been unbelievable. Hats off to Brian Daboll. Hats off to him. Giants are playing some good football.
At Tampa Bay Trey, Pro Football Focus, the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. We're getting into Trevor Sikkema season, baby. It's not even just the football. It's the draft process and all the insights and analysis that my guy is so great at. Buddy, it's great to catch up. Thank you for the time as always, and enjoy the football this weekend.
Appreciate it, Buck. You too, my friend. Anytime.
Trevor Sikkema there with us on 104.5 The Zone. A lot to digest there about the Tom Brady Tampa Bay coaching situation, and not allegations, but analysis of a situation that, Brady might have recognized halfway through the season and managed things accordingly. 615-737-1045. We'll talk about that more coming up next. So a lot to chew on about the Tom Brady situation, which, by the way, we're going to get to regarding the Tennessee Titans here in, let's call it a half hour, shall we? Got some thoughts on that particular circumstance that Trevor Sikkema did a little to maybe move me on, but I'll explain what I mean by that in just a second. Meantime, a move that was made, a general manager hired in the NFL yesterday, and one who was interviewing for the Tennessee Titans general manager position. Congrats to Monty Ossenfort, formerly of the Tennessee Titans front office, who is now the new general manager of the Arizona Cardinals. That's awesome. Monty is somebody who has been in the league for a long time, a considerable amount of time with the Patriots, before he ended up joining the Titans front office staff, and somebody who I really enjoyed working with while he was here during his time and now gets the opportunity to run his own show in Arizona. So they have a lot of legwork to do. Head coach, Kyler is something. I don't know. I would love to obviously Monty would take the opportunity, given that those opportunities are so few and far between, but I'm fascinated by the Kyler Murray just experiment, shall we call it.
The prevailing quote that has come out of Monty Ossenfort's opening presser as the new Cardinals general manager, which happened about half an hour ago, is ego will not be tolerated in this organization.
Monty coming in hot. I like that.
Well, that wasn't, obviously he's not answering a question about Kyler there. That's just a pretty general statement.
Philosophical, but
yes.
There's a lot of, one, ego is run. I respect Monty and the position that he needs to take in that spot, but also ego's everywhere. Ego runs rampant in every NFL organization ever. In fact, they need to have ego to be able to do their jobs at a high level to an extent. Now, ego can't become toxic the way that it clearly seemed to be with Kyler and disagreements about the coaching. And what did he call them, like towards the end of the season or maybe closer to the middle part of the season? Schematically bleeped?
Schematically, we were bleeped in a post-game press conference.
I would kill for a quote like that. I would sell my soul for a quote like that, just because you never hear quarterbacks have honest moments almost anyway, and then something like that is particularly interesting. But yeah, congrats to Monty. So that now narrows down the general manager search for the Titans by at least one name. Ryan Cowden, still an internal candidate in the mix, alongside with the others that they have interviewed and have one more interview today with a member of the Bills front office at this point. So as we said earlier in the show, there will be a resolution certainly sooner rather than later, because Senior Bowl is less than 2 weeks away, and obviously they want to be prepared to have the proper ramp-up process for whomever is going to be guiding the Titans as the GM in the future. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. Jason in Nashville has been waiting patiently. Hey, Jason.
Hey, man, thanks for taking my call, but love the show. Hey, so my winner and loser, I'm going to put Brady as the winner, even though somebody may have seen him as a loser yesterday. He never loses. If he walks away from the game today, he's got a $300-something million contract waiting on him. So if that's a loser, I wish I had those losing problems in my life. So I look at him as a winner despite of his loss yesterday. The loser that I see in the NFL is Jonathan Abrams, the defensive player that plays for Seattle. The other night, you clearly seen him pick Debo's leg up, twist it right there in front of everybody, knowing that was the leg that he had previously got injured on. Debo's sitting there like, y'all don't see what this dude is doing? And it really helped us because it fueled the Niners to come together and pull the comeback in the second half. But that's the type of stuff that I feel like, but it's just low class, that they're not calling stuff like that out. It ain't like it was hidden under a pile. He did it right there in front of the Lord and everybody. So just wanted to hear what you had to say. That's my winner and loser. See y'all later.
Thanks for the call, Jason. So as to the Jonathan Abram play, yeah, obviously that's nasty, but did you see Tom Brady try to trip a Cowboys player last night and accidentally I think he tripped Julio Jones, which is basically, that's a roll of the dice right there to see if Julio gets back up. And Julio kind of played pretty well Titans legends.
Brady looking like a soccer player out there with the slide tackle.
And like that he always go, I mean, because the angle did not really allow him to go cleats up, but he does tend to lean that way in ways that are deeply problematic and also make me laugh every time I see Mac Jones do it because it basically reminds me of Mini Tom.
The Abram thing was terrible though. That was, I mean, like Jason
so it
said.
wasn't Vontez Burfict bad because that was somebody who I always associate with like extracurriculars, twisting ankles and whatnot and the like between plays. But yeah, you have to have some degree of. I understand it's a very emotional game, and I know what I can't speak to the mindset of an NFL player in real time, in live action, and the kind of things that it leads you to do because what they do for a living is insane anyway. But like, get a grip. You can't be doing that to somebody. Obviously, you wouldn't want that. It's the golden rule principle, especially when the health is at such a premium at an important time of year when teams are trying to make a playoff run.
It couldn't have been more obvious, too, the way he was doing it. Like, I'm with you. At the bottom of a pile, it's almost like anything goes. But he is getting up. Debo is still on the ground, and Abram is on his feet, hanging onto his foot and, like, yanking it, twisting it. And Debo's just got his arms outstretched while his back's on the ground. Like, are you seeing this?
I shouldn't laugh because it was truly not right what he did.
And
but
Debo, a guy who's dealt with injuries on and off throughout the course of the season, who takes a lot of hits. I mean, he can't be doing that, man.
What Jonathan Abrams is kind of an interesting cat anyway. Like not, I mean, he's had some quotes when he was with the Raiders, and obviously that situation fizzled out there relatively quickly. Yeah, I don't know much about him, but that was obviously a horrendous look. We will pivot back into the Tennessee Titans coming up next. We are going to, we're going to take a look at the NFL's divisional round. We got some good insights and analysis from Trevor on one particular game, but now that the final 8 teams are set, and we'll see the 2 teams that had the first round bye in action, I've got a lot of different things I want to talk about with that divisional round, and then the Tom Brady sweepstakes, and what we're hearing about the Tennessee Titans and Tennessee Tom, ? Coming up next.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. More Titans staff changes this week in both the front office and the coaching staff. Multiple reports this morning that the Cleveland Browns will hire defensive assistant Jim Schwartz as their defensive coordinator. On Monday, Titans director of player personnel Monty Ossenfort was announced as the new general manager of the Arizona Cardinals. He had his opening press conference about 45 minutes ago. College basketball, ninth-ranked Tennessee back on the road to Mississippi State tonight. The Vols beat the Bulldogs 87-53 just 2 weeks ago in Knoxville. Tip-off set for 6 p.m. Vol Network coverage will start on the Zone at 5:30. Vanderbilt hosting number 4 Alabama at Memorial Gym, a 7:30 tip tonight. And Belmont will host Murray State. 3HL will broadcast live from the Curb Center until 5:30. The Bruins and Racers will tip it off at 8 p.m. Nashville Predators also in action tonight after a 2-1 home win over the Flames on Monday. They'll go again hosting the Columbus Blue Jackets, a 7 p.m. puck drop in Bridgestone Arena. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour for us this morning, or I guess this afternoon, but we're happy to have you here. Either way, welcome in. Lucas and myself, we are with you till 1 o'clock. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Divisional round ahead of us in the NFL. Titans offensive coordinator search and general manager interviews ongoing. Keep you updated with the latest on that. We'll get to Tom Brady and the Titans in just about 15 minutes from now. But in the meantime, the actual football that's going to be played, the matchups, I really, really like. I mean, there's not a bad one on the board when you talk about being into the final 8 teams, but all 8 really pose an interesting problem for each of the, or rather all 8 pose an interesting problem for the team that they're going to be up against this weekend. So Jags and Chiefs, and I don't know how Titans, I mean, I know Titans fans are rooting against the Jags. Like, there's no circumstance in which Titans fans are rooting for the Jags, even though the Jags are kind of a fun story. Maybe, can I sell you a little bit on Trevor Lawrence having he's already had a bit of a breakout moment, despite, almost collapsing them in the first quarter and then bringing them back with 4 touchdown passes and a game-winning field goal drive.
I mean, when we talk about quote-unquote darlings, like we were talking about going into the wild card round, do the Jags kind of take that moniker?
No, they are. They are. The Jags are this year's Joe Burrow and the Bengals, kids.
Yeah.
And I know that probably, which also puts a bad taste in many people's mouths here locally about the Titans and the Bengals. But I do think that, the Jags are 9-point favorites. They're going to Kansas City. Kansas City is...
No.
I'm sorry, 9-point underdogs.
I was going to say, that simply can't be.
That's right. I read the line wrong. It's okay. Thank you for being there for me, though. Good save. 9-point underdogs heading to Kansas City. You said, Lucas, that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was just activated by Kansas City and that the only player who's not practicing for the Chiefs right now is Mecole Hardman.
Yes.
They're trying to be cautious with their best deep threat at this stage.
So Helaire's 21-day window is officially open to come back off IR.
Right. Patrick Mahomes is going to be the NFL MVP. And Trevor Lawrence coming out of a 27-point hole, you can't do that against Kansas City. They'll just keep burying you. They're not the Chargers. They're not mentally frail. They're not, coached by somebody who seems to be a self-saboteur from time to time, and your boy Brandon Staley.
I almost said something mean.
What? No, you can say it.
Not coached by a middle school math teacher.
Oh, that is mean.
It is mean. It's too mean.
What's right? Whoa. Hey, I am certain, well, they're probably not listening to us right now because I would imagine they're in the middle of their school day, but what do you have against middle school math teachers?
Nothing.
Oh, I don't think so. It doesn't sound like it.
Well, I had a testy relationship with my math teachers in middle school.
Well, it's evident, by the way, that we consistently fail to do math on air. If asked simple math on air, well, I'm telling you, we collapse like the Chargers in Jacksonville.
It's the worst running joke in sports media because anytime something like this is brought up, everybody says the same thing, right? Oh, I was told there would be no math. But it's just so true.
No, and we're actually dumb.
Like everybody that is in this business is god-awful at it, and they're in this business for a very good reason.
Well, I'm in this business because I literally have no other discernible skills other than I can, be bitchy into a microphone a little bit from time to time. But looking at the situation for the Jags and the Chiefs, and this particular divisional round matchup, Puka says middle school math teachers smarter than Brandon Staley. Yeah, I know many very well-educated middle school math teachers. I don't know what slight Lucas Panzica has against the middle school math teachers in this country, but, pay the teachers more is my position.
And Staley was actually far more conservative this season than he was a year ago. Like the things that make you just want to tear your hair out with Brandon Staley, even if you're not a Chargers fan, didn't really come into play as much this year. It wasn't as much of a discussion, but I do question. I mean, he's obviously very inexperienced. I kind of question him as a leader at this level. But his players have been defending him pretty staunchly, and clearly he is going to stay on because Joe Lombardi is the scapegoat firing.
People are burying you right now. What's wrong with middle school math teachers?
Nothing is wrong with middle school math teachers.
I believe the children are our future.
Pay teachers more.
Eric says.
Pay teachers what the Chargers are paying Brandon Staley. There are several middle school math teachers that are far better at their jobs than Brandon Staley is at his.
I assure. Well, there's no bias there whatsoever from Lucas. So here's the deal. The Chiefs are going to win this game, and I don't do game predictions. Like there is no circumstance. Joe Burrow at his stage last year with one more year experience. Well, I mean, I guess it's the same stage that Trevor Lawrence is in. What are you giggling about back there?
Puka says a middle school math teacher would have sat their best wide receiver in the regular season finale.
Oh, yeah, the one that ended up with a back problem afterwards that couldn't go?
Mike Williams. Could have used him.
Oh, God. I mean, it would take an otherworldly Trevor Lawrence performance. And listen, it was in the second half. That was straight franchise quarterback, 10, all-pro type of stuff that he did against the Chargers, who had them in their grasp. Now, it's different doing it against the Chargers than the Chiefs. And, you still need luck at that point. The Jags can be that good. They can be that team that they are in the second half of these games. They're the anti-Titans to an extent. Titans are futile in this, at least this season, utterly futile in the second half of games. I think they're averaging 5.5 points per half. Points per second half down the stretch is the number I believe I saw from our colleague Teron Davenport.
Well, remember when Brett Kern was in here talking about the three things that a Mike Vrabel team needs to do to win, right?
Well, that they believe that a Mike Vrabel team needs to do to win, yes.
Right. Is outrush the opponent, better QB rating, win the turnover battle.
Yep.
The Jags certainly did not win the turnover battle against the Chargers. It was -5, which the more you say that, the more ridiculous it is that
in
they
a
won.
playoff game.
In a playoff game, which has never been done before.
Honestly, that's like the Chargers are such choking dogs, man. Like,
yeah, that one's gonna hurt for a long time for Chargers. I mean, that one's gonna go down in history for Charger fans.
I cannot. You to even say these things out loud. You read them all the time, and you're just like, oh my God, that's really bad. But to say you were +5 in the turnover differential. 27 up 27-0 and blew it.
Like, what's worse? 9 sacks and still losing the way the Titans did with the Bengals last year, or going +5 in the turnover margin and still losing?
No, I think
it's turnovers.
I think it's the Chargers.
Much
like the Titans one felt bad, and you were the number 1 overall seed, and the implications are a little different because you had the rest.
But what the Titans do in that game? They lost the turnover battle. Anyway, QB rating. Advantage Chargers. Justin Herbert, 84.7. Trevor Lawrence, 70.2. 4 picks will do that to you. The only thing was the rushing total, where that was, not even the largest discrepancy. 117 rush yards to the Chargers, 67. So that was the antithesis of a Mike Vrabel winning performance.
Now, Lawrence got good protection against the Chargers, who do have some guys that can get after you. And I mean, statistically, I don't know where the Chiefs and Chargers stacked up against each other at the end of the regular season, but the Chiefs are not having as good a defensive season as they have had in years past. Their personnel has obviously changed, and they're still a threat. And you know that who's Blaine Bishop's guy, the defensive coordinator of the Chiefs? It's going to drive
Spagnuolo.
Steve Spagnuolo. You know Steve Spagnuolo is going to heat Trevor Lawrence up as often as humanly possible in this game and dare them to try and beat the concept that Spags likes to run. But Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram are matchup problems for anybody. It doesn't matter who you are in the NFL right now. Doug Peterson will know how to attack Steve Spagnuolo's defense, given that he was a part of that Chiefs staff and understands conceptually their what they want to run and who their players are. And I think that one though is the most predictable of any of these games. If any team has a shot to knock the Bills off, it's the Bengals right now. I would not want to see Joe Burrow in Cincinnati coming in, no matter how good a team. And the Bills are a good football team. No disputing that whatsoever. And that, of course, is the one that's going to have all kinds of emotions caught up in it because of the circumstance that led to that game not being finished in the regular season in Week 17 between the Bengals and the Bills, the Damar Hamlin circumstance that obviously has worked out, fortunately, for the time being, and his situation as good as humanly possible. But with all of that, like, I really, like, I'm not looking to do game picks today, but I mean, I would favor the Bengals in that spot, not by like Vegas betting lines and stuff like that. Bills are a 4-point favorite at home. But I would think that the matchup advantages would favor the Bengals in that spot based on what we've seen from them and the problem-solving ability that we've talked about with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati and Zach Taylor and their coaching staff. Giants and Eagles, like, if any team got tightened, like as a number one overall seed, it seems crazy to say that about Philadelphia. But, like, I don't know what the status of Jalen Hurts' shoulder is, even though they've had time off. They have a couple of injuries. Lane Johnson has said he's going to play, their stud right tackle. Daniel Jones, though, is kind of frisky. I mean, not kind of frisky. He's legitimately a problem.
Best matchup of dual threat quarterbacks in the divisional round.
Why are you doing this?
What happened in the regular season meetings? I'm trying to go back and between the Eagles and Giants.
So the Giants got them at the Giants lost to the Eagles.
With Davis Webb as quarterback in the regular season finale.
Yeah, and Jalen Hurts did play.
And then the first meeting was 48 to a pretty wide margin of victory for the Eagles, 48-22. That was December 11th.
And was that I'm trying to think. That wasn't the last game that Jalen Hurts was, like, healthy for.
I don't think it was the last one, but Hurts was fully healthy in that game.
And they obviously dominated.
Yeah, Hurts got hurt the following week.
If you forced me to it and said pick the upset on the board that you think is most likely to happen, something about that Giants-Eagles matchup, even though the Eagles won both of the games in the regular season, it's very, very difficult to beat any team, no matter how much more talented you are, to beat them 3 times in the same season. Yeah. Is a heavy lift. Now, it's going to be a competitive game. I think it's truly going to be a competitive game. And the Giants, man, I mean, they have rounded into form nicely. They have been on a good trajectory all year long, but they have rounded into form nicely as the second half of the regular season concluded. So, to their credit, I think that's probably the biggest. Man, I don't think I would feel confident about. I mean, Philly's going to feel confident. Nick Sirianni clearly has no lack of confidence, and nor does the roster at this point, nor should they, I guess. But just as an objective observer here, I would not like that matchup if I was the Eagles.
I mean, how about 3 out of the final 4 in the NFC being out of the NFC East?
They really have made me eat it since my campaign to defund the NFC East in 2020. We even had a hashtag going for the longest.
And even the Commanders were on the bubble until the second to last week of the year where they inexplicably start Carson Wentz out of nowhere.
That's what I'm saying. If they don't make that quarterback, they fired their offensive coordinator, but if they don't make that quarterback change, and, like, who's to say? Because we obviously have the results in hand and it's easy to do the analysis after the fact. But, like, putting Carson Wentz back in there feels like it cost them the playoffs. And then it would be very, very difficult to get all of those, all 4 of them into the postseason. But there was a time when all 4 of them were in the postseason picture, which is crazy to think about. So the divisional matchup will be fun, and we'll talk more about that later on in the week. In the meantime, the team that got bounced, one of the teams that got bounced from the wild card round last night, more specifically, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their quarterback, pending free agent Tom Brady. The interest between him and the Tennessee Titans is already being reported on, but there are some things that we need to flesh out a little bit about that coming up next. So, wild card weekend wrapped up last night. Tom Brady and the Bucs, they get bounced from the playoffs 31-14, a blowout loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys get off the Tom Brady curse. They get off the road playoff game curse. They're cooking for the time being. Now, the question is Tom Brady cooked? Last night was not a strong endorsement of what Tom Brady is at this point in his career. But if you were listening about an hour ago to Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus, who was for the longest based out of Tampa, was covering them for Pewter Report before he ended up going to Pro Football Focus, and obviously has a tremendous amount of insight. And in his new role, he was talking about the idea of, okay, Tom Brady, what Brady has been this year and the problems that the Bucs have are not necessarily as closely connected as people might want to make them if you haven't been watching the Bucs that closely. Now, Tom Brady is going to draw more average viewership than random NFL teams because he's who he is. But he's 45 years old, and he's treating last night not like he's going to retire, not like he's going to ride off into the sunset, but like he's saying goodbye to Tampa Bay. These are some comments from the end of Tom Brady's post-game media availability with local Tampa reporters, and see what you make of this statement.
I just want to say thank you guys for everything this year. I really appreciate all your effort, and I know it's hard for you guys too. It's hard for us players to make it through, and you guys got a tough job, and I appreciate all that you guys do to cover us and everyone who watches and is a big fan of the sport. We're very grateful for everyone's support, and hopefully, I love this organization. It's a great place to be, and thank you everybody for welcoming me, all you regulars, and just very grateful for the respect, and I hope I gave the same thing back to you guys. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That man's not going back to Tampa Bay next year. He said it's a great place to play. Didn't say anything about I'd love to be back. He's the best available free agent quarterback at 45 years old on the market this year. Now, it helps that he's surrounded by like Baker Mayfield and let me not put any evil on the name of Jacoby Brissett, because honestly, I'm as impressed with Jacoby as any quarterback in football this year, given the circumstances and how much he was often betrayed by defense and special teams with the Browns. But Tom Brady is the best available free agent quarterback on the market. And the reports from Tampa, Pewter Report specifically, saying that there was a plan in place to fire Eric Bieniemy, Eric Bieniemy is the Chiefs offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, to fire Byron Leftwich as early in the season as the halfway point. And ultimately, Todd Bowles made a decision to ride it out, kind of like a Todd Downing situation. Titans were aware that they were going to move on before they ended up making the actual firing of Todd Downing and three other coaches on Mike Vrabel's staff, but ultimately decided distraction not worth it. Let's ride this thing out and see if it can't course correct a little bit. And it didn't. Now, to hear Trevor Sikkema lend his insight and analysis to it, Brady, who I'm sure was consulted about the idea of moving on from Byron Leftwich during the season, how much impact he did or did not have in that move not being made, is a thing that would contribute to the idea of Tom Brady midseason checking out and the inexplicable inaccuracies. I don't know how long you guys stuck with that game last night. And for whatever reason, I was hate watching it because I guess there's nothing else on and I might as well watch NFL football. And although I guess I could have watched the Preds. They won last night. But, NFL playoff, probably going to ride with that. So just watching the Brady experience to see if there's anything that I can learn that's any different than what I've seen from this man for 18 weeks of the regular season and a team that's really, really down bad. And Troy Aikman is the first, it was funny to listen to Troy Aikman talk about Tom Brady because he's just like, I have no explanation for why Brady and Mike Evans can't figure this out after they've had so many successful years together or several successful years together. And there's wild inaccuracies all over the place from a guy who is not inaccurate by any stretch of the imagination. And when he wants to hit on those deep passes, he can connect with regularity. It's just something there is not right. So what is he doing out there? Essentially, I'm paraphrasing for Troy Aikman, but it's basically, what is Tom Brady doing out there? Because this doesn't look like the guy that we normally associate with the greatest of all time, even though he's still he's physically fine. So then it comes to the, now we begin the Tom Brady quote-unquote sweepstakes. And the reporting from Ian Rappaport on their pregame show, NFL Game Day, on Sunday morning, where he's linking Tom Brady to the Titans, the Raiders, and the San Francisco 49ers by nature of teams that would be interested in Tom. Not that Tom's interested in, but that would have interest in Tom Brady, familiar franchises who were reportedly sniffing around him in 2020 before he, I think, legitimately shocked the sports world and went to Tampa. I don't remember a single person having Tampa. Maybe Jay Glazer, when Jay Glazer says it, it becomes so. I think I have more respect for Jay Glazer than I think anybody else in our business, because the guy does not miss and he picks his spots. But Brady and the Titans, okay? So let's work through this a little bit. Because what I said yesterday, and I stand by this, is it would be a terrible football decision at this time to move on from Ryan Tannehill for Tom Brady specifically, given all the unknowns around the roster. And then I started to think to myself, well, he is coming here, or if the Titans are interested in him, who is expressing this interest in Tom Brady? Other than, Mike and him are buddies, and they're close, and that's fine. And sure, I'm sure Mike would have a productive working relationship with Tom, and Tom would have a productive working relationship with Mike. But you know what else kind of sticks out in the middle of this? This damn team doesn't have a GM yet. So how can anybody from the Titans side of things determine that the Titans, or say that the Titans are going to be interested in Tom Brady when they haven't even, they're still going through the interview process as recently as today? Which would then, lead you to do a little more sniffing around and understand that, no, it's Brady's side of things that is putting this stuff out there. Not Brady himself, but Brady's machine. Brady is a corporation unto himself. There is an entire economy built around the most successful NFL player that any of us have seen. The closest thing that the NFL has to an international superstar. Tom Brady and the Tom Brady media machine going into full spin zone and putting out teams that would be interested in Tom Brady when those teams don't necessarily make the most sense right now is the thing that kind of throws the biggest wrench into this for me. Now, there will be teams who do due diligence on Tom Brady. We talked about this yesterday. But do not sit here and tell me that the Titans side of the organization is putting out there, sniff around Tom, when the team doesn't even have a damn GM yet.
There's also no degree of logic that would say Tom Brady would be interested in coming to Nashville. Like none
Other than
whatsoever.
Tom Brady wants there to be Tom Brady is not dumb as to how he goes about these things. And I'm not saying that he's single-handedly orchestrating this. But, yes, it does not. But did the Bucs make sense for Tom at the time? It wasn't even a point of conversation.
Well, it turned out to make sense with what they were able to put together on the offensive line and the weapons, and Mike Evans is already there, and they bring in Gronk. So, yeah.
Mike Evans was there, and they had a couple of pieces. But a lot of that Super Bowl team came after Tom Brady officially signed. Now, you can get as creative with the math as you want to. This, under John Robinson, that was not something that they were terribly willing to do. In fact, the only time that they decided they wanted to get super creative with the math was the Julio Jones thing, and then that banged you on the Tannehill cap hit this year and, lasting implications from that. But the Tom Brady Super Bowl team, the Bucs were a competent roster. Jameis throwing 30-plus interceptions in an NFL season is going to derail anybody. And yes, you are correct that the skill position players were there. But when they signed Tom Brady, a lot of those guys, a lot of those mercenary-type guys who were out there on the market, Sue and, at a better version of Ndamukong Suh, and who was the pass rusher that they signed from the Broncos, Shaq Barrett.
Yeah.
These kind of guys followed Tom Brady because that signals, okay, win now organization. If we go here and we win, then I can cash in another spot or potentially run it back as long as Tom Brady's there. But it was always, as Trevor Sikkema told us earlier, living on borrowed time. Now, you can choose to live on borrowed time if you're the Titans. And you can orchestrate something similar, even though the contract situation here looks a lot messier for the time being.
And not just the money. I'm not going to pretend to know what the Bucs offensive line situation was in 2019 or going into 2020, but I'd be willing to say that it wasn't as bad as what the Titans are facing right now, as far as a complete overhaul with maybe one or two pieces that you feel like you can build around if they were to give Nate Davis a contract and Nicholas Petit-Frere going into his second year as the right tackle. Other than that, there's not really any clarity on this Titans offensive line right now, and I have a hard time believing that one off season would make it good enough to where Tom Brady, the current iteration of Tom Brady, would be comfortable behind. Because for me, the biggest issue with Brady right now appears to be, because you're right, like Trevor said, the arm is fine. He's accurate.
He's fine.
He can throw it as far as he could always throw it. He looks terrified to get touched.
Well, because he knows. Because he knows he wants to keep going.
Yeah.
And that kind of lends itself to the theory. And it's a theory that Trevor was not reporting that Tom Brady checked out in the middle of the season after they didn't fire. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with this.
What, Bowles?
No, Leftwich. Byron Leftwich.
Oh, Leftwich, the OC.
Sorry, too many offensive coordinators.
Yeah, and it was a tumultuous year for Brady, and obviously all the personal stuff with Giselle and the movement with the coaching staff. Trevor used the phrase that it's hard to get motivated, when you know that your OC is probably out the door and you know the team's ceiling is relatively low.
Here's what I'll say, though, about you. You mentioned the 2019 Bucs offensive line, so I pulled up their roster in 2019. Now, literally no tackle was worse in football this year than Dennis Staley, quantifiably so. So you are correct. The 2019 Bucs offensive line situation heading into 2020 was still better than the Titans is right now. But great. Like Ryan Jensen they signed him from the Ravens, and he is a stud player. Ali Marpet, I believe, he was either a rookie or early on in his career. That was a small school player that they drafted, ended up having a good career, retired early for health situations, but was not regarded as a good player. Their left tackle, where is his name? Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith was actively mocked by Cam Jordan of the New Orleans Saints when he signed a contract extension. Basically, we're going to eat for 3 more years or whatever the contract length that he said. So it's not like Donovan Smith, who was terrible last night, too. Still out there as their starting left tackle. I mean, it's not beyond the pale, but here's what complicates all of it, okay? Tannehill. Trading Tannehill is the only way that I think that something like that happens. And that dude, whatever you may have been able to move, if you were interested in moving him, if you were exploring the possibilities of such, not coming off ankle surgery, ligament damage, high ankle sprain for a quarterback who does need whose mobility is definitely an asset for whomever would choose to take him in the next iteration of his career. Trading Ryan Tannehill has never seemed less likely than coming off the season that they just had.
Although we've seen stranger quarterback dealings, in Indianapolis, looking at you.
It's not an ACL tear. It's not an Achilles. It's not, Indy. Let's not cite Indy for quarterback logic.
I'm just saying, we've seen stranger things happen. Like a team giving up picks and paying the $36 million it is that they would owe Tannehill next season. We've seen stranger things happen. But the thing with Brady is that feels like the biggest difference of Tom Brady now versus Tom Brady 4 years ago is that he is so much more aware of taking contact and going at much greater lengths to try and avoid that. In my mind, for good reason, he was letting the ball go so much faster this season than he has. And I know that's always been a strength of his, but
no, he led the league.
Yeah.
He led the league in average time to throw.
He was trying to they weren't able to connect on deep balls with Mike Evans. The big plays weren't there this season because Tom Brady sees the pocket collapsing around him and is trying to get the ball the hell out of there. And you saw it several times last night. The way he underthrew players. He was almost always under significant pressure. Like, he's not the same quarterback when it comes to being able to take a hit and get back up and still be Tom Brady. For me, he is much more aware of trying to avoid taking those hits, avoiding contact in the pocket. So for me, having no knowledge of it, I would think that would be his biggest priority. The best possible offensive line you can find me. for a chance to win a Super Bowl. Like, he's not in it for a check. If he's in it for a check, he can go step up to the broadcast booth.
Of the teams mentioned, though, the Niners are the only one that have that. Like,
Right.
the Raiders' offensive line is not good. They were
Absolutely.
working with like a 7-man rotation this year.
But the Raiders, when you talk about the changes the Bucs made going from 19 to 20, would probably be in a better position to do that than the Titans would, as far as the offensive line goes.
Like I said, it just depends on what your future, like what you want your future to be. Are you okay with winning a Super Bowl if it means you're the Bucs in 2 years? Like, hey, are you okay with winning a Super Bowl if it means you're the Rams right now? Like, those kind of things are the cost benefit analysis that ultimately because you can make it work. You can make it work with the way that that the salary cap is. I don't want to call it flexible, but it is. You are able to manipulate it if you wanted to do so.
It's just with those three teams mentioned, the Raiders and Niners would make far more sense than the Titans. I think the Titans are last on that list by a long margin.
None of them make sense is my point. And the point being is I think people are curious as to why would the Titans be interested in Tom Brady when in reality, do not look at the Titans as the one who are outwardly expressing interest in Tom Brady at this point. Look more at Tom Brady and who may be leaking stuff around Tom Brady with the intention of trying to drum up a market.
Sure, but why wouldn't the Niners make sense?
For exactly the same kind of quarterback. I mean, it's a more flexible quarterback situation than any other that we've talked about, but it's not an easy decision for them. Jimmy Garoppolo is a free agent. Trey Lance has been on injured reserve, and Brock Purdy apparently is the second coming of
Tom Brady,
football Jesus, of Tom Brady.
I'm just saying that talk in San Francisco hopefully is about the divisional round and you know what they're doing right now, but sports radio in San Francisco, I'm sure, is having some discussions about, hey, you know what? Deal Trey Lance, bring in Tom Brady, let Purdy work behind him. Best situation that he could possibly go to as far as offensive line, defense, weapons, play callers.
You know what? That makes more sense than swapping out Tannehill for Brady.
Yeah, much more sense.
As far as
much more sense.
Proven commodity and players who make sense for what it is that you want to run, Tannehill is God help me for saying this. Ryan Tannehill, when he's healthy, puts them in a better position to succeed next year than Tom Brady. And that does something to I can't believe that I've outwardly said that, but it really does feel like that's the thing that makes the most sense for future sustainability. The question is, if you're the Titans, how much into the future are you actually looking? Are you like, I don't know, bleep this, let's go right now? 615-737-1045 is the number. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, update some polls coming up next. So, Tannehill gives the Titans a better chance to win next season than Tom Brady is something that I said into a microphone. I think that should qualify me for some kind of mental help in most circumstances. But I mean, I really do feel like that's the case with this team as currently constructed. Now, we are far away from, well, not as far as it may feel, but we are still a considerable amount of time away from any kind of movement on that front. But it'll start to ramp up very quickly. Like I said, Senior Bowl, when the entire league is together in Mobile, Alabama for a week, you will see a lot of these things, the groundwork start to be laid. And then, of course, Combine, where more and more of that will come to fruition. And then once we get to free agency in March, where free-for-all at that point. 615-737-1045. Last call for phone calls. Darren in Spring Hill is next. Hey, Darren.
What's up, guys? I understand y'all have a radio show to do, and Lucas and Buck, you guys are the best in the business. You got to rile up entertainment. But it's almost arrogant to me that we're entertaining this concept of Tom Brady. We're not in a position to think that that's the only thing we need. We don't need a new quarterback. We need a healthy quarterback. We need a left tackle. We need help at receiver core. We need guys on the defensive line that aren't limping around in week 15. Our pieces are too many for us to entertain this concept at this point. Draft, and that's what we need to do. First of all, we have to find the general manager, and I will hang up and listen. You guys get me through my day every day, and I will plug y'all all day long to everyone I know that does not have a radio. So I appreciate y'all.
Well, you're very kind, Darren. We appreciate the sentiment. Now, here's what I'll say. It is worth entertaining today because Tom Brady's season just ended and because of Sunday's reporting. So I think today it is okay to entertain that thought. We have so much time to talk about everything else, but given that it was, given the time, the window that we have to talk about this, circle back around to it once more concrete things start to come about. And obviously, you are correct. There are many, many things that this team has to focus on first and foremost. The Tom Brady thing is more novelty than anything at this point. I just wanted to clarify for people that the Tom Brady thing is coming from Tom Brady's camp as opposed to where it might seem like it's coming from the three organizations who, according to Ian Rappaport, would be interested in Tom Brady. That's all. Tony in Madison.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I was just want to comment on that Tom Brady, Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is fine. We just need a good offensive line that help Ryan Tannehill do his job. We don't even need to consider Tom Brady.
Well, I think every NFL team should consider all possible options when it comes to upgrading their roster. Now, how you prioritize it versus them doing due diligence, those are two different things, right? You can look, and thank you for the call, Tony, 615-7, you can call Blaine and Mickey if you want, 615-737-1045, but we're about done here. I do think that it is, I am of the, you guys heard me. I think that Tannehill puts him in a better spot given all the other things that they got to do, and that the problem is not Tannehill. Like, Tannehill's so far from the problem for this team. And, we can get into that more later on, but I think that to do your homework, that is what they employ pro scouting staffs to do beyond general managers, beyond college scouting staffs, and all these different things. Anyway, we have time. Polls.
Stop the count! Stop the count! The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's the segment where bias takes over and nuance goes to die. Now, here's your favorite Buck Rising Show daily correspondent, Lucas Polzica.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on all non-specialty new Fords. Who are the winners of the weekend? Karen, Kenneth, several say Brock Purdy. All he does is win.
If it's not Brock Purdy, it almost seems like we discounted Brock Purdy and talking about how good a weekend Daniel Jones had. But damn, Brock Purdy.
No, he was fantastic on Saturday.
Go out there and have a day, my guy. Pounding his chest. I love the energy. Mr. Irrelevant. is in the final 8 NFL teams competing for a Super Bowl, and I think he deserves all the credit in the world.
And you can talk about the protection he has and the situation with the play calling and the weapons, and it's all very favorable, but that one play where he is scrambling around, scrambling left, escaping pressure, comes back around to his right, pump fake, stutter steps, gets his feet set, and then delivers a strike.
That was dumb.
To the back corner of the end zone on the sideline to, I think, Ayuk, who had the toe tap touchdown. He gets drilled on the plays. He's letting it go. Man, that was like some Pat Mahomes stuff we were seeing from Brock Purdy.
I'm telling you, listen, professional athletes can get hot at any time, but with the degree of difficulty on what he's doing, yes, he has a very good coaching staff in place to help him. He's got good players out there with him. But I am actively rooting for Brock Purdy the rest of the way through.
Who are the losers of the weekend? Several say the Chargers. Eldon says, and as they just fired their OC, looks like Staley is staying, so it's even worse.
Fall guy, yeah, the Chargers, man. Choking dogs is that franchise for ever and ever. Amen.
Did Tom Brady's performance last night change your mind about if you want him on the Titans? Majority, 72% say never wanted him. 19% say, nope, still want him. 9% say, yeah, now I don't want him.
I'm surprised the percentage is that high.
Vast majority says never wanted him.
Mm-hmm. I think that's retrospect. I think many of you are lying to us, and you just want to be able to say to your friends, no, I never wanted Tom Brady ever.
We had one in here about where Sean Payton will end up in 2023, but I just didn't do it. Okay. Oh, what will Tom Brady be doing in 2023? That one I did do.
Thank you.
Grit says being annoying. Puka says playing golf. And Andrew says, as long as he's not wearing two-tone blue, I don't care.
He'll be playing quarterback. It's just a matter of where, kids.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That is going to do it for us today. Blaine and Mickey are going to have some good... I'd be curious. Blaine is going to be must-listen today, as he is every day, but particularly on the loss of Jim Schwartz for the Titans. Going to the Cleveland Browns, obviously somebody that Blaine is very, very familiar with, having played for Jim back in the day. So you'll enjoy that insight and analysis with Blaine and Mickey, and then 3HL broadcasting from Belmont.
Yeah, big game tonight. Murray State at the Curb Center.
Mm-hmm. Always a good rivalry.
Going to be out there till 5:30.
Are you doing something around the game? Is that why you got in my ear?
No, I just wanted to shout that out
Okay.
because before we know it, like regular season's not that far from being over in college basketball.
Moves so fast.
Like
honestly.
we have little over a month, which is insane.
Yeah.
But get out to the Curb Center if you can.
Yeah, and best of luck to Coach Alexander and his team tonight. We will certainly be watching. Have a great rest of your afternoon. I'll talk to you tonight on Primetime. Radio show starts at 10 tomorrow.